This is the Analysing Anfield podcast on the Blood Red channel, bringing you the best tactical and statistical analysis of Liverpool FC.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of Analysing Anfield as we approach what is going to be the England announcements for the Euros. This is usually a Liverpool podcast. We're going to keep it Liverpool themed. I'm joined as ever by David Hughes. Dave, how are you getting on?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, mate. Very good indeed.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about what has been a contentious topic for months, and that is Trent Alexander-Arnold, really. We're going to delve into, his game a little bit. It's going to be a shorter episode, of course, with it being a special. And we're just going to talk about maybe why England, maybe there's a few doubts there, why he's thriving at Liverpool and he's deemed to be not so useful for England, how Gareth Southgate maybe should use him, how he shouldn't use him. All that sort of stuff, really. Just a general, I suppose, a talking Trent episode, Dave. He has certainly been a player to split opinion when it comes to the England call-up, at least. Have you got any general thoughts on him being left out, first of all, before we get truly into him? And obviously he's been announced in the provisional squad, but when he got excluded a few months back, was you surprised?
I was surprised. Look, I have to say, hand on heart though, I do believe he wasn't in his best form at that period of the campaign. So I could understand the reasoning behind it. That being said, it didn't feel like he'd been poor enough to be left out the side. Like, for me, he feels like one of the key foundations. You have maybe a core group of internationals for England that should be in there, barring anything too severe, should be in there for every selection, irrespective if they're not at the top of the game. And I would have included him there. I would have put him in there with the likes of Harry Kane and maybe Harry Maguire, those type of players. So yeah, I was a little bit surprised. I wasn't sure maybe the fact that he wasn't available for the selections 6 months earlier. Maybe that was a factor and it was easier to leave him out. But it was certainly a shock.
I think for me, although it was a bit of a surprise, I think it's been insistent since thinking about it though, because obviously Southgate used the fact that we've got plenty of right backs and Trent hasn't been in his best form and stuff like that. But I also think Southgate almost saw it as a bit of an opportunity to leave him out, because I don't think Trent has played particularly great for England compared to Liverpool, at least. And I don't think he's been as valued by Southgate compared to a manager like Klopp. So I think although there was underlying reasons maybe behind Trent getting dropped, I do think Southgate was almost keen to do it. It was an opportunity whereby he could have done it, and I think he obviously did. It caused uproar and stuff, but just getting into Trent's game, then when it comes to what he's good at, the absolute basics when it comes to the tactical approach of your team, it's supposed to, in essence, get the best out of your players. It's supposed to shine a spotlight on what they're good at and hopefully mask what they're bad at. So in terms of Trent, just the absolute basics, what would you say he's good at? Because I think there's kind of four main boxes where you can say he's above average, he's better than the average fullback certainly, and the average player in most cases when it comes to these areas.
I think the obvious one is he's an excellent creative asset. In some ways, maybe even unrivaled compared to others in that position. Now, looking at, I appreciate there's a lot of good threatening wing backs in the Premier League. There's one on the opposite flank in Robertson, but I think if you look at the kind of the way in which a lot of wing backs traditionally attack or provide that offensive threat, it's regularly with those overlapping runs, kind of crosses from the byline. A blueprint of Trent is a little bit different, isn't it? A lot of us, he can do all that. We've seen that as well. But some of it is most penetrating kind of deliveries into the box tends to be a little bit deeper, in those kind of half space areas. And I'd say the more impressive from a technical point of view, the width that he gets on it, you can tell he just has that extra kind of technical ability compared to other wing backs across the division. And then that brings you on to something else that he's really good at, and that's being a phenomenal passer of the ball. He's got such an effective and varied passing artillery that it makes him basically a threat on not only on the right side of the pitch, but also in terms of switching it over to the opposite flank. And if you think of what Liverpool face week in, week out on a regular basis, quite often you need to have that switch of play capacity to overcome these teams that sit so deep. So they're two main things for me, and that's not even touching on anything else, any sort of defensive aspects or anything he brings to the side.
No, I agree. I think, when you look at his game, I think ideally you want him to be in a role where he's doing ball progression. I think is one of his key strengths. Just moving you from A to B, moving you up the field. He's really, really good at that. Chance creation, which, you touched on in terms of his creativity and stuff. He's right up there with the best when it comes to creating chances for his teammates to score. Switching the play, which you've just mentioned, and crossing. I think those are probably the four departments for me where he's way above average in terms of his quality. If you look at Europe's top 5 leagues this season, for example, so key passes, obviously it's a few blind spots to the metric, but key passes just, a pass that directly leads to a shot. So obviously it includes set pieces, which maybe isn't ideal. Maybe he wants some open play in there, but in terms of those key passes, Trent ranks 15th in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. And for a bit of perspective, the only defender he's behind is Filip Kostic at Frankfurt. And I'm pretty sure he plays extremely offensively. I think he used to be a winger, Kostic. So I haven't caught much of Frankfurt this season, but by looking at that, you can kind of say Trent's been the most creative, in essence, of all the fullbacks in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. Just behind him is Luke Shaw, who's been, got voted Manchester United's Player of the Year and stuff. And then when it comes to what else I mentioned in terms of his ball progression, so progressive passes, top of the league, top of Europe's top 5 league, for the season, Lionel Messi, shock. And then in second, funnily enough, former Liverpool man Luis Alberto, who's another, I suppose, attacking midfielder. And then you've got Trent. So that's kind of what you want him doing, and that's thankfully what Jurgen Klopp has got him doing at Liverpool. There's underlying reasons why he thrives at Liverpool to do with the details of the system, which, I'll let Dave go into next. But in terms of why he thrives at Liverpool, it's largely because Klopp provides him with a platform to essentially do those things, basically.
Yeah, spot on. For the bulk, if you think of the bulk of Trent's time at the club so far, since he's come through the senior setup, Liverpool have been quite untraditional in a way that they've been less focused on having, creative profiles through the middle of the pitch, in the midfield, which, as we've said many a time on this show, is always been a little bit more industrious. You've had players like Henderson, Milner, Wijnaldum, these type of Fabinho, who really good at breaking up play, recycling the ball, often play kind of self-sacrificing. And what that means is, the wing-back areas for Liverpool have become those real kind of creative forces, I guess. A lot of it's been centred around building down in those spaces, and the ability to switch the play means that we can go from either flank if one side becomes crowded, you can switch it over to the other, and you've just got two really good creative assets. And the reason I say it's quite unique is that if you think of the other rivals of Liverpool in the Premier League, you think of Manchester United. They've got Bruno Fernandes through the middle there, kind of key creative spark. Got Paul Pogba in there as well. Manchester City, Kevin De Bruyne. A lot of the creative threat, although they have threat in the wing back areas through the likes of Shaw, Walker, whoever. It still almost funnels a lot to going through the middle, with Liverpool to the complete opposite. And obviously that's perfect for Trent because he sees a lot of the ball. He's given a lot of attacking and creative freedom. Those stats made me laugh early in the year where people kept it become a bit of a theme, didn't it, for a few weeks where everyone was kind of counting how many times Trent lost possession of the ball. But the irony is that he's given that freedom to take more chances, isn't he? And therefore he is going to turn over the ball more, but that doesn't mean that he's suddenly a really bad player. So yeah, Liverpool's just been created this perfect platform for him to produce his best work. Probably better than if he was at another club where they've got these key creative profiles through the middle of the pitch.
A funny little aspect, actually, on top of what you've just mentioned there regarding this tendency to lose the ball, is out of his past 4 seasons at Liverpool in the Premier League, he's completed his highest completion rate is this season. He completed this season on average 75.3% of his passes. Last season, when Liverpool won the league, it was under 72%. Around 74% the year before, and around 73% the year before that. So roughly, when Trent is on the ball and he's making passes, he's kind of losing the ball over 25% of the time, a lot of the time. And that's kind of, it depends how the way you look at it. It could be deemed as a weakness, but for me, I think it offers an insight into his role. And I think you're spot on when it comes to what he's doing at Liverpool. I think the midfielders that have been at the club. Obviously, Naby Keita was brought in, but I think he hasn't been able to stay a regular spot, basically. And the midfielders Klopp's had to field has kind of almost forced that progression onto Trent's shoulders and onto Robertson's shoulders. So the system just kind of works. The system's kind of balanced. And then when it comes to the final third, Trent's able to take all these kind of risks and he's able to lose the ball less often because the midfielders Klopp has been fielding are just so capable of regaining the ball, recovering the ball, and then just starting again. You think of Fabinho, Wijnaldum, Henderson, how keen they are to counter press, to restart another wave of attacks. That prevents Trent with the platforms to thrive. And I think, those key areas that I've just mentioned above, in terms of, ball progression, chance creation, switching the play, crossing, he's allowed to do all of those things from right back. The right back position, right back role, whatever you want to call it, presents him with a platform to do those things. It doesn't really negate any of them. And it's kind of where he, in my opinion, needs to play for England. But then when it comes to England, Dave, obviously Southgate receives a lot of stick from the Liverpool fan base. He gets talked about as, tactically naive and stuff like that. But I actually like the way he's thinking with it in a way, because I was sick of seeing, years back trying to play Scholes and Gerrard and Lampard in the same system and alongside 2 strikers, and it was just frustrating. So I actually think Southgate's applying tactical balance maybe more than a lot of England managers I've seen in the past. And I can see why, looking at Trent, he's kind of deemed to be, I suppose the best way you could label him is he's quite an unconventional fit, isn't he? He's a bit of an unconventional tactical fit, and I think from an England perspective, that might not be what Southgate is after, really.
Yeah, definitely. We just touched on, earlier, Liverpool's Premier League rivals and the players they kind of have in those central or attacking positions. Your Bruno Fernandes's, Paul Pogba's, Kevin De Bruyne's, stuff like that, players like that. And I said that Trent may not have thrived as much as he has at Liverpool if he was at one of those clubs. And, you know, England's the prime example. You touched on it at the top of the show, where he's not always felt like he's been a top performer at international level. No, I don't remember him I don't remember watching him in an England game and being blown away. That's not to say he's played particularly poorly either, but it's just a different level of performance for England compared to what he does at the clubs at club level. And then obviously you look at the squad Southgate has. You know, you think of the creative type they've got in there: Phil Foden, you know, Jack Grealish, Mason Mount, players like that who are, you know, more central type players, or more creative players in between those lines. And if you think of if you think of playing them and then having Trent in there as well, and trying to see the best version of him, you can see why there does seem to be a little bit of an unbalance there. So then, what you're then looking at is, do you have Trent playing a little bit more of a kind of conservative version of himself? You know, more like a traditional right back. And we've said before, you know, both really big fans of him, goes without saying. But if he didn't have everything that he has in terms of his creative capacity, technical ability, you know, passing range, you know, if you were just relying solely on his ability as a right back, you know, specifically say defensively, is he a phenomenal talent? I think it's fair to say probably not. And not a bad defender. I think what's getting blurred, the lines are getting blurred a little bit between being a kind of, you know, Premier League level right back standard defender and being suddenly this horrendous player who can't defend for his life. That's too far. He isn't that. But, you know, when you strip away all these kind of talents that he does have and just judge him as a box standard right back playing a box standard right back's role, you know, is he better than a Reece James or a, I don't know, Trippier? I haven't watched a lot of Trippier for Atletico, so I don't know if he's improved since the Spurs days. Apparently, you know, he has. He's been a top performer, but, you know, on that basis, if he's just looking at it like that, this is from the eyes of Southgate, if that's how he's looking at it, then maybe he is thinking, well, you know, to play this more traditional right back role, I might be better going with one of the other candidates than Trent.
No, I think you're spot on. You know, I agree with everything you've just said there, really. I think if you'd never seen Trent and you was to watch him for the first time and you could only see him without the ball, if you could only watch Trent in defence, really, I think you'd probably deem him as bang average. Really, you wouldn't think he was a special talent. You wouldn't think he had anything unique to his game. You see all of that when he's on the ball. That's Trent's game, really. And as you just said, you know, England could field in the same team Grealish, Foden, Mount, even Kane. Kane offers plenty of ball possession nowadays. You know, in terms of Trent's usual qualities, they maybe get a little bit stifled at England level because of the teammates he's surrounded by. And I suppose the spotlight is then placed on Southgate. You know, do you want to give Trent a dominant role then, or not? You know, do you want to give an unconventional role to Trent, or do you want to stay more conventional? Because the perks of those, you know, Grealish, Foden, Mount, they offer Trent type qualities in conventional ways. So you can have a bit of a normal, you know, keep coming back to the word conventional, an orthodox system. If you field those players compared to, so you could field Grealish, Foden, Mount, and you could field Kyle Walker maybe. And the system would kind of play out how a traditional system would have, you know, sort of thing. So I do see why he's kind of deemed to be a little bit of an odd tactical fit. Having said that, I do think this term gets coined all the time, really. But I do think he's kind of in the generational mould. I don't think you see many right backs able to impact the game like Trent does. And someone said, I can't remember, a pundit said recently on a game, he's probably one of the only right backs in Europe, really, who can win you a game on his own. And there's not many right backs out there that can do that. So obviously, me being a Liverpool fan, I would be inclined to say to Southgate, you know, you need to be a bit more inclined to give Trent the keys to the team, basically. But I can also see why he's a little bit reluctant to do that, given the traditional attackers he's got at his disposal. But I think Southgate will pick him in the squad. I'm not sure he will start every game. Specifically the first game, I think it's quite tough. England have got is it Croatia or someone like that? I'm not sure.
I'm not too sure, yeah. No,
but in terms of how he should be used, Dave, roles, Southgate's talked about him as a potential midfielder and stuff like this. I think if we're being really varied with it, I think there's 5 possible roles Trent could probably take up, basically. I think you've got right back, you've got right wing back in a 3. You've got, I think, left of a 3 as a right-sided centre-back, I think is an interesting shout that no one's mentioned. You've got right-sided midfield in a 3. You've got a double 6 as one of the 6s, and you've got as a right winger. I think those are your options for Trent, if you're being really elaborate about it, if you want to go across all kinds of different positions. But I think if you look at them, I do think a lot of them have downsides, apart from right back, really. I think if you look back at the start of the show, when we were talking about what Trent is good at, I think he's the only role, in my opinion, where he's allowed to do all of his good things is right back for me, and possibly right side of a 3. I think other than that, every role would kind of stifle some form of his game for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the main issue. It's also a big gamble because, I think trying him out in one of those other positions, the problem is for Southgate, he's under so much scrutiny, isn't he? And I think some of what we're saying, about giving them the keys, so to speak, letting them be that the main man, the kind of focal point, the one that everything the play that all the play goes through almost. I think the issue is you'd have to build a team around him. You'd probably have to leave out a lot of these other really valued attacking talent. So you Mason Mounts, Fodens, those type of players, Grealishes, would they have to start on the bench? If you don't get the results you're looking for, the scrutiny from the media will be all about his decision to have these players at his disposal and not use them. And instead, around Trent, and it doesn't get the positive results. It could do, but I'm just trying to look at it from his point of view. So then I think with that in mind, that probably he'd have similar fears about trying him out somewhere else. So it would be right back. But then again, as for everything we've just said, will he play him there? Maybe the right wing back might work with the back 3, but I can understand this headache a little bit. To us, it makes sense to just use him in the best possible way, give him all the tools he needs to go and impact the team and win football matches for you. But obviously, Southgate's probably looking at it from a wider point of view and thinking, it's a gamble. I've got a really good squad there without him. I could put together a really good solid 11 without him in the team. I'm probably good enough to go and compete as well. So is that the safer option? Maybe it is.
Yeah, the thing is as well, Harry Maguire is kind of, battling for his fitness. And if Maguire's not fit, Southgate probably doesn't play a back 4, which means there's no right back slot. That would mean he's either playing as a right wing back or a right-sided centre-back. Now, he's been used as a right wing back by Southgate. And I think I can see why he's done that because, typically it looks as though, if you think of a typical wing back, he's being allowed to have his defensive flaws a little bit masked because he's getting covered and he's playing a bit more offensively. And, he can just go and attack as normal, basically. Mm-hmm. But I think what that has done in the past when he's played wing back for England, he's seen the ball less and it's almost placed a spotlight on his physicality in terms of running up and down the flank relentlessly, which he's kind of not one of them. Andy Robertson's more in that mould. Kyle Walker is probably more in that mould. And I think that's why, I think it'd be interesting to play Trent as a right-sided centre-back in a 3, because at least then you wouldn't get the chance creation because you wouldn't be anywhere near the final third, really, but at least you'd get the progression. You get the balls through the lines, the balls into the final third, and that sort of stuff. So I think that'd be an interesting one to try, but then to try it in a major tournament would be a bit of a big risk. If he was to play as a right winger, you maybe get more of the chance creation, but I think you get less progression. Then you get less of the ball progression because he's playing as a winger, so it's probably going to happen a bit less. So I think for me, you're getting the best out of him either as a right back, which it remains to be seen whether England will play that's a system that uses a right back, or as a number 8. And again, playing him as a number 8 for the first time in a major tournament, it is just a risk that Southgate could probably do without. So without wanting to look like I'm supporting Southgate's decision and like that, I think this is, I just wanted to provide a bit of context around the decision from, I suppose, an Analysing Anfield perspective as to why it's, despite Trent being an unbelievable player, it's there's more to it, really, isn't he?
Yeah, I think you have to say, I think if he wasn't English, he'd benefit so much more. You'd probably see a much better version of him if he was, say, and I mean no disrespect to any other, I'm very conscious of what nation I'm going to name here because I don't want to offend anyone, but get on well with the Scottish, so I'll say Scotland. Say Scotland do have some decent players, but I think if he was, say, Scottish, there'd be more of a window of opportunity for the side to be built around him and probably see him produce his best stuff. Whereas England have just got so many really good up and coming talents, really top players, Mounts, Fodens, Grealishes, the top Premier League players, in great form. You've got too many of them, I think, not to use them. Whereas I think if it was playing for another nation, he'd probably have a better opportunity having the team built around him, and in turn produces club form on international level.
Yeah, just to build on what you've just said there in terms of the players you've just listed, these aren't just good players. These are top talents. You're talking about Mount, Grealish, Foden. So in terms of what I listed before, when I said Trent is where he is in Europe for key passes, creating chances for his teammates in the Premier League only, Trent is 6th, and he's the top defender in 6th place. But in 2nd in the league, you've got Mason Mount, and 3rd in the league, you've got Jack Grealish, who missed about 2 months, and most of Grealish's as well come through open play. I think Mount benefits from a few set pieces. Foden is a bit further down, but I don't think he's played the minutes. I think Foden's played quite a bit less. So it's going to be interesting to see what Southgate does. I do think he'll select him in the squad, but whether Trent plays anywhere near such a prominent role as he does at Anfield remains to be seen. And if that's not the case, providing Southgate feels enough creative spark to get England through to the business end of the tournament, I'll do my best to understand it, really, even though it's a tough one to take, because in my opinion he's an absolute top talent, and he's a Liverpool Academy product, probably the best one since Steven Gerrard, really. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out, Dave.
Yeah, it is. It's one to keep an eye on, but I think the conversation we've just had definitely contextualised it all, in my opinion, which sounds very biased, but I just think I look around, I don't see people having that conversation. It seems to be very black and white, but I think in this particular scenario, there's a grey area, and that's why it's probably been such a headache for Southgate, but also difficult for many Liverpool fans to understand how you could leave someone so good out.
Yeah, I mean, I can't stress enough, just before we round up, how much an England squad is not just a selection of the country's best players. It's you have to form a squad, and even deeper in that squad, you have to form a first 11 that is functional. And it won't be functional if you just feel the gang of attackers at every position. It'll be a bit mental. So going into this tournament, especially considering that a lot of these players haven't played together or don't play together on a regular basis. You need balance there, and hopefully Southgate will find a way to strike it, and hopefully he'll find a way to do it with Trent on the field. But yeah, we'll round up there. Little half an hour talking Trent, and we'll be back next week to talk about Liverpool transfers. Just as we're recording, by the way, on the Friday, Ibrahima Konate has been announced, so that bodes well for next week, Dave, for when we start getting into the players that we think Liverpool should sign, considering they've signed someone already. But yeah, thanks for joining us anyway, mate.
Thank you, mate. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and be sure to tune in next week. Cheers.